recap what happened at C4 Wrestling this past Friday night. And of course, somebody who is always on to discuss everything going on with C4 and even a little bit of what's going on in the Ottawa Indies. Of course, Tanner Reil joins us. Tanner, thank you so much for hopping on with us once again.
Yeah, good to be back, man. Lots of bonus content coming out, eh?
I know.
That Q4 grind. I heard the episode a couple of weeks ago about the Observer Awards there.
Yep.
So yeah, great to be back. Great to talk C4, their last show of the year. And yeah, going out with a bang with the big tag tournament. Lots to get into.
Yeah, certainly a lot to get into. As you mentioned, all of a sudden we're pumping out a lot of bonus audio. I don't know what it is. Some of it is just something I've wanted to do in the case, as you mentioned, with the Observer Hall of Fame and getting a chat with Josiah. A lot of people seem to like that audio. So I thought that was nice to hear. And obviously a lot happening the last couple of weeks in WWE and AEW with their pay-per-views and PLEs, however you want to call them. But before I even get into the C4 stuff, I need to ask you this question because we are recording this on Wednesday, December 4th. And the big talking point of today has been the Spotify Unwrapped gimmick. And everybody revealing their favorite songs, their favorite artists, and in some cases, their favorite podcasts. So now I am here to put you on the spot here, Tanner Reil, because that's what we do here on this show. We put people on the spot and we want answers. Tanner, I need to know, did This Is Wrestling make at least your top 5 in terms of podcasts listened to?
Well, I'm going to be the bearer of bad news here. I am an Apple Podcasts user and an Apple Music user. I don't get this fancy Wrapped at the end of the year, but I have no doubt you'd at least be probably top 2, top 3. No doubt.
There you go. There you go. I put you on the spot. I am actually shocked that Apple Podcasts don't have that sort of feature for them. They have it for songs, right? I'm not an Apple user, so.
Yeah, they do. It's called, I think it was Replay. I looked at it today, but I think that's even a fairly new thing. Maybe this year or last year. I don't remember that being a thing for a while. But yeah, there's no such thing for the podcasts, but guarantee you guys are up there for sure. Maybe alongside some Sens pods, but yeah.
It's for certain the highest ranked wrestling podcast.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Without a doubt. See, that's all I wanted to hear, really. I wanted
Chris
to hear.
Van Vliet might be nipping at your heels a little bit, but it'd be pretty close.
Oh man, yeah. I in terms of that, thanks everybody who was able to share their Spotify Wrapped, Unwrapped, whatever it's called. I do it every year, and yet I still do not know the gimmick. But I want to thank everybody that shared their Spotify Wrapped and showed that This Is Wrestling was one of their top listens of this past year. So always appreciative of that. But what is Tanner Reil listening to? Like, I'm not going to let you off here easy. I need to know what is in Tanner Reil's playlist.
Oh, for my Apple Wrapped.
That's right.
My replay,
yeah.
if you will. So a lot of my songs, the top ones were actually soundtracks, because I tend to listen to soundtracks while I work.
Yeah.
And at the top of that was the Red Dead Redemption 2 soundtrack.
Oh,
a couple of the songs in there. Actually, I finished that game towards the start of this year, and I don't know if you've played it at all, but it's unanimously considered one of the best like story video games of all time.
Oh yeah,
it hits hard. Like it's the first game that had me in tears when I was at the end of it. So
yeah.
There's a few songs in there that just because I finished it this year, I was listening to them a lot, or I'll turn on the background music while I'm working. So those ranked rather high, as did Bye 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 by NSYNC.
Oh, really? Because of Deadpool, I would imagine.
100%.
Yes.
100% it was because of Deadpool. I was playing that thing for like 3 weeks straight.
You did. You went into the NSYNC discography and were like, oh, I really like this song. I got to see what NSYNC brought in the late 90s.
Yeah, actually, I was such a big NSYNC fan. That's why I went and saw Deadpool.
Did you get the frosted tips? Did you get the frosted tips afterwards?
I was considering it, you know. If I lose in fantasy, maybe that'll be my punishment.
There you go. I do want to see that visual of Tanner Reil with the frosted tips ready to go with his notes for C4 Wrestling and their recent show this past Friday night, The Edge of 17, which is also a reference to a song. So that is something there. Talking about everything going on with C4. Let's kind of get things started here. Where do you want to go in terms of this review of the C4 show? What's the best way to kind of start off this recap?
First of all, worst segue in the history of This Is Wrestling.
What are you talking about?
You gotta
Edge of
take some more notes
17,
from
Stevie
Lee there,
Nicks?
but
Edge of
no,
17,
not
Stevie
even
Nicks?
that the first one, but I'll
Wow.
let it slide. You know,
Wow.
Lee's not here to carry the show. So
I was
that's
trying
okay.
to do the Spotify Unwrapped to the Stevie Nicks reference so that
You
we
could
could
have at
get
least
it.
said we're gonna unwrap this C4 show. or
No,
something
that's
like
too
that.
predictable. You got to get a little bit more creative with the segues. It is true
All right,
though.
you're the
I'll tell
pro.
you why. I'll tell you why. You know, Lee is not on, obviously, not because of anything else, because he saw that Spotify Unwrapped or Wrapped or whatever it's called was all over his timeline. And if you have heard Lever Sage in the past talk about this gimmick, that is something that he is not a fan of. So I think he anticipated it was going to be brought up on the show and said, "Nah, that's not going to happen." Okay.
Well, he probably felt bad because he knows that the episodes that him and I did together while you were gone were so near the top. He didn't want to like rub it in at all.
Wow. See,
So,
it's
give
already
us a
setting a
shot,
tone.
See if we can run with it. Maybe we'll hit the top of the Unwrapped next year or something.
Wow. Unbelievable. Wow. I thought the Edge of 17 Stevie Nicks reference was a great segue, but apparently not. Apparently,
No, it
I had to
wasn't
do
that
it like
one.
a
It was
gift.
the one you did before that, but I'll let it slide. It's a great title for the card here.
That's
I think
right.
half the fun of Mark's booking is figuring out what title he's going to come up with next.
Oh yes, there's always some sort of reference that the astute viewer will be able to pick up. But no, in all that, where do you want to start here with this show?
I think for this one, it definitely revolves a little bit around the tag team tournament, which coincidentally actually opened the show. So I think even just going chronologically would probably be the best way to tackle this.
For sure.
So pretty well how this tag tournament worked. This was the fourth one, the fourth annual one for those unfamiliar. It's all in a tribute and in memory to Terry Ann Gibson, the wife of Steven, one of the co-owners and bookers of C4. She passed away a number of years ago. Like I said, I believe this was the fourth annual one.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially how it worked this time was they had 2 6-team gauntlet matches, and then the winners of those 2 gauntlet matches faced off again later in the night. So 12 teams total, and they booked these 2 gauntlet matches to kick off the show with the final towards the end of the card.
Gotcha. So can you go through some of the teams that kind of stood out for you in this in both of the gauntlets there?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a few of them in here. You have it really showed me just how deep this division is and has become, and that's even with the absence of Violence is Forever. They weren't a team that took place in this. And then Fight or Flight having broken up a couple years ago. They've got a really good deep division. I could go as far as saying deeper than some of the television companies that you see every week. But I'll just run through the 2 matches here. So the first match opened with Brent Banks and James Stone. And then you also had Project 8100. You had Trey Alvin Turner and KJ Swade. You had Triple Dragon, Puff and Pretty Ricky, the reigning tag team champions. Sexy Eddie and Bob Anger. And then you had Miracle Generation.
There you go.
Within the first match there.
And who was the winner of that gauntlet match?
It was Miracle Generation. The last team they eliminated was Triple Dragon after a pretty good back and forth. There
you go. The former IWTV tag team champions that lost their belts to Fresh Air recently. So interesting that they come back into this gauntlet and get themselves into the final match. Of all those teams, you know, we've seen Miracle Generation before in terms of how they've been able to put on matches for C4, but and we've seen a couple of these teams obviously before, but was there kind of a standout team in this gauntlet for you?
I think 8100, they got in there kind of late, so I wouldn't say it was them in this match. I'm definitely going to have to talk about them more when we get towards the final because they had a really good showing. Honestly, that might have been my favorite match on the night, the final there. But 8100 looked really good, and we've been talking about them the last couple of months. They've kind of got this storyline going on with Brent Banks and James Stone, where Banks and Stone pretty well haven't been able to beat them, which, again, they were not able to in this match. But 8100 really click. They remind me a lot of like FTR in the sense that they cut the ring in half and are, you know, the no flips, just fists. I think they have their own variation of that. So they were really fun. Obviously, Puff and Ricky. are probably the most overact in the company behind Junior Benito. So they're always fun to get in there, a bit more on the comedic side, but they actually, I'm not a big comedy wrestling fan, but whenever they're actually wrestling as well, I'm into it. And with Puff and Pretty Ricky, something just clicks. I quite enjoy them every time I see them.
There you go. So that is a look at that gauntlet. Let's talk about the other gauntlet match as part of the 4th annual Tag Memorial Tournament. Who are the competitors in that one?
Sure. The second half here, we had Beer League All-Stars. What a name. We had the Flatliners, Elevation, the Tabernacta Team, and Cecil Nix and Kristara. And then last but not least, Stu Grayson and London Lightning.
That pairing was interesting when that was announced.
Yes, it was. And they worked really well together. I quite enjoyed it. I think they may have tagged before, like in a multi-person, like a 6 or an 8-man, but it was the first time it was actually just the two of them.
Right.
And yeah, it really worked.
Any other tag teams in that gauntlet that really kind of stuck out for you?
Yeah, Flatliners were one that I really enjoyed. I hadn't seen them before, but from what I understood, they were making their return to C4. But they opened the match actually against Beer League All-Stars, and I think they got like 2 or 3 eliminations in a row. So they looked quite dominant early on. Someone else said it there near me, and it clicked for me, but they reminded me a lot of the Steiners in the way that they wrestled.
I could see that because those are 2 big boys in the Flatliners. That's a long time indie tag team there. A little fun fact for those that might be tuning in. If for those that have watched The Amazing Race Canada, they were contestants in season 3 of The Amazing Race Canada. I think they finished second actually that season of the show. So they are known. I know that one of them there, I believe it's Asylum, who's also gone off to do a couple of TV commercials, and one of the other gimmicks that he has is Stone Rockwell on the independent scene. More of his babyface persona as opposed to what you see with the Flatliners. And I saw the clip of their finishing move, which is a cool looking finishing move. Very much a Zach McGibbon tag team, let me tell you, when I see the Flatliners.
Yeah, they were the standouts for sure. But yeah, as mentioned, Stu Grayson and London Lightning did pick up the win in this matchup. London Lightning submitted Kristara to win in the end. So your final there, London Lightning and Stu Grayson taking on Miracle Generation.
Sounds good. So we'll put a pin on that in terms of the final. Let's look at some of the other matches here on the card. What was another match you want to talk about? We could talk about the street fight here. We could go to the C4 Championship. I'm going to give you a pick the road here, Tanner, in terms of where you want to go next.
Let's go to the street fight, because aside from the tournament and the championship match, I think that was definitely the standout. Certainly one that had a lot of build coming into it, with Fuerza and Vertigo really dragging this out over a long time. The breakup between the two of them, initially forced, and then they kind of got back together, and then Vertigo turning heel and laying out Fuerza a couple times there. So yeah, as you mentioned, it was a street fight. But before the match could start, Fuerza actually came out in a boot and a crutch, and walked down to the ring, basically saying that he wasn't cleared to compete. He had injured his leg in some sort of fashion. Could see through it a little bit and figured he was probably playing Weasel. I could definitely tell when I saw the wrestling shoe on his one foot that the match was still going to go down, and I figured that would be the case. But Vertigo got all cocky and was going to make the ref basically count him out, and make Fuerza admit that he was the better wrestler. But eventually they did get going. Fuerza broke the crutch over him pretty well. They wrestled all over the arena. Really, really good match. These two have amazing chemistry. I mean, wrestling as long as they did as a tag team, and growing up basically on the independents together, you figure that would probably be the case. And yeah, this was definitely the strongest singles match of the night. They were wrestling with chairs. They had the doors in there. The crutch was used a lot. Vertigo really worked over Fuerza's foot a lot. He did like putting the chair around it and doing the stomp on it. Tried to do a concerto on the leg, and he did, which resulted in a ref stoppage. So that's how the match ended. So going into it, I'm not sure if Gabriel Fuerza was legitimately injured and actually wrestled this match on one foot, but he made you believe it, and it was really good.
There you go. And that's the goal if you're a professional wrestler, is you make the fans believe what's going on in the ring. And based on some of the highlights I've seen from this match as well, some quick little montage thing, as you mentioned, really targeting the leg. It's a street fight, so you're going to have more of the hardcore match elements, but with a feud like this, it makes a lot of sense, obviously. And it's funny you mentioned that with tag teams, because it's funny. Some tag teams, it seems to work out so well, where they have this great chemistry with each other. Once they break up, they do the big blow off match, and then they kind of move on. But I could also think of some tag teams too that weren't able to pull it off. And some of those tag teams were, blood related. Like I could think of the Hardys not having the greatest singles matches when they broke up and had their singles feud, when Matt and Jeff kind of faced off against each other. I could go back to the late 90s where you kind of hope for more with Rick and Scott Steiner. Funny, you kind of mentioned the Steiners earlier. That kind of popped in my head. Yeah,
there's a one on WrestleMania last year.
Oh yeah, oh yes, with Jimmy and Jay. That was definitely underwhelming. I was hoping for more between those two. Yeah, it's kind of funny how some tag teams, they just work out. It seems like a very, very big high or a very big low when it comes to the tag team breakup turning into a singles feud.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with these two, it works because they're also individuals in a way. They've wrestled singles a lot. They haven't just been straight up doing the tag team thing for a while. And just the talent on these two is insane. I know a couple of weeks ago, they were on a show in Toronto, and WWE ID had put out a thing that they were going to grab somebody on this show. And my mind immediately went to both of them.
Yeah.
Probably more so Vertigo between the two, but I wouldn't have been surprised if it was Forza. Didn't end up being either one, but I think they're on that level where one of the big two are probably going to start looking at these guys in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that was an interesting show news-wise, because you had the WWE ID person there in terms of, I believe it was North Pro is what it's called over in Toronto. And because there was Zoe Sager, who I believe comes from the BC area. And you also had the announcement of Josh Alexander not doing independence anymore, which has kind of sparked some curiosity. And obviously the recent news of him, his contract is expiring in February, or he's a free agent in February. And he's got two different companies that I think he would work well in. He could go to WWE. Personally, I think it would be a crime if he stays in NXT, just so that they could do the Ethan Page reunion, because I think he is way better than a WWE NXT superstar. But obviously he has that landing spot there if he wants to reunite with Ethan Page, or he could go to AEW and just be part of a roster that we know that he could deliver in the ring in terms of his matches, and he would certainly mix in well, especially if an incoming Mike Bailey is to be believed into AEW. So that was an interesting news show. I figured that bring that up, but it sounds like it was a very good match between Vertigo and Fuerza.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, very interesting with Alexander there. But yeah, I could definitely see either of these guys getting ID'd like anytime soon.
Yeah. I would lead towards Vertigo too, only because I don't know any sort of intentions he has. If he likes working the independents, he wants to work for a major company. I have no idea. I am just purely, thinking out loud here. But considering some of the promotions he's worked overseas in Europe, whether it be ICW and Progress, both are companies that have had WWE ties in the past. I'm sure he's had some looks, but certainly something there.
Not only that, but he can talk.
Yes,
like he can really talk. If you've seen any of his promos on that he posts on Twitter,
yes,
like he's got that down for sure.
I think it was Mustafa Ali that shouted out one of his promos one time, if I recall.
Yes.
Yeah, he's very good, and that's all him too. By the way, in terms of the editing and the video and all that, that's all him. So it's really well done. Let's talk about you were mentioning Violence is Forever earlier. There was a match announced of Kevin Koo versus Robert Martyr, I believe is how you say his last name.
Yeah, I believe so.
So talk about that match a little bit, because obviously we know with Violence is Forever, they're a very good tag team, very good on the independent scene, but those are also guys, especially in the case of Koo, in my mind, that could work a singles match really well.
Yeah, Koo's a phenomenal wrestler. I'm still shocked that Violence is Forever hasn't been picked up, but one of the top independent tag teams, not just in Ontario, but wrestling all over the States as well. You see them in GCW a lot, DPW, places like that. They're just phenomenal. But Kevin Koo really works as a singles guy as well. But Robert Martyr was someone I had not seen going into this. I wouldn't say he blew my mind like some of the other guys C4 has brought in before, but he was a solid opponent for Kevin Koo. And this match was kind of what you expect. Very MMA heavy, a lot of submissions, that sort of stuff. A big strike fest. But really solid overall. Kevin Koo did pick up the win, which I think a lot of us expected, and kind of gave Robert Martyr a rub in the end. So maybe he's a guy that we'll see back in C4 in the coming months.
Yeah, not too familiar with Robert Martyr myself either. I've only seen him, be briefly mentioned in a couple of other IWTV streams or shows and whatnot, but I've not gone out of my way to see his matches. So somebody, I guess, he is a young guy, just kind of based on what I'm looking at here. So obviously still has some upside, still plenty of years left to kind of continue to grow, but obviously getting put in a big match here against Kevin Koo to kind of showcase himself. And that's something too I've enjoyed with C4 is, it's you get some big established guys and you have them work with guys that are on the come up and trying to make a name for themselves. Those are some good showcases when it comes to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about the Mark Wheeler match, because this is another guy that I'm not too familiar with. And I believe his name is Junie Underwood, I believe is the name, how you say it.
Yes, that's correct.
So talk about that match a little bit as well. I mean, I'm a big fan of Mark Wheeler. I've had a chance to call a couple of his matches, and I think he's somebody that's just he does really, really well in the spots that he's put in. So kind of talk about this match and how you kind of came away with Junie Underwood.
Yeah, so this is also my first look at Junie Underwood. Nice to see some new guys kind of getting mixed into this card here. You kind of need that when you've got a lot of your roster dedicated to the big tag matches. But yeah, Underwood was pretty good. He definitely impressed me. Certainly more of a high flyer. So in a way, this was a little bit of a David versus Goliath sort of match. But I mean, Wheeler's no slouch. He's pretty quick as well. And I'll definitely echo what you say. Wheeler's like stepped up in a big way. I'll say, especially in the past like year to year and a half. Kind of since separating himself a little bit more from Locked and Loaded. Great tag team there, but I've really been enjoying a lot of his recent stuff. And this was another great match, very fast paced. They were wrestling all over the place. Really good. And yeah, and I enjoyed it. Mark Wheeler got the win. And I hope they keep giving him more of these big spots because he certainly earned it. And yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it's somebody to kind of keep an eye on as well in Junie Underwood. Again, a guy that's younger, looking through, he's only got 2 years of experience, so obviously still plenty of time to grow and get better, coming from the Philadelphia area. And again, somebody that I'm not too familiar with, and that's kind of one of the cool things. And I wish it's kind of lost in today's wrestling, to be honest, where you always hear when a company announces somebody, it's like, oh, who's this guy? Does this guy draw ratings? Does this guy draw a number? It's like, man, what happened to the appeal of, this guy, is being brought in. Nobody knows too much about him. Let's see what he does. Like that sort of appeal of the unknown. It seems like today, and I don't know if you echo this here, Tanner, but it just seems like, whenever there's somebody that people aren't too familiar with in the wrestling scene, they just kind of shun them and say, oh, if I don't know them, then they practically don't exist. That sort of mentality.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing I'll give props to C4 for is they really bring in some of these lesser known guys that are, maybe just starting out on the independents and are still kind of finding their footing. Obviously, it helps having the keep so close and getting a lot of guys straight out of there, but elsewhere in the States as well, and sort of the north, east, northwest. But yeah, it's really great. I love the way C4 handled this, putting him in there against a more established guy who's been doing C4 for a while with Mark Wheeler. And these two really kept up with each other. I believe Junie posted a spot on his Twitter account, so I definitely go out of your way to watch that, of the way that these two were flying off the ropes and kind of keeping up with each other. It was a really great match.
For sure. It's something. And just a final point in terms of like the unknown, I remember, I guess 10 years ago now when I was watching a lot of PWG tapes, and I was not familiar with either Trevor Lee or Speedball Mike Bailey. And I will forever remember, seeing those two guys for the first time in PWG as I'm watching through and realizing, oh, they announced Speedball Mike Bailey from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. was like, oh, this is a local guy around here. He's wrestling in a armory in California, and he's taking on this Trevor Lee guy. And then all of a sudden, I saw the reverse Hurricane Rana onto the apron. And as somebody that had not seen that move before in 2014, absolutely blew my mind. So it's one of those things where it's like you didn't know the guy beforehand, but he went out there and he showcased himself, and now everybody knows the speedball Mike Bailey is. So, and Trevor
I think
Lee.
a lot of people are about to as well.
Yeah, exactly, with the way his trajectory is going. Let's talk as well about let's talk the C4 championship match. And then we'll quickly talk about the 6-man and then go to the final. So first, let's go to the C4 championship.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell us everything about it. There was a late change. Initially, this was going to be Evil Uno taking on Hot Stepper McRae Martin, but obviously it got switched up.
Yeah, very unfortunate. We talked a lot about that match last month when we did our C4 review with McRae challenging Evil Uno, cutting this really impassionate promo. I think a lot of people were really excited for that. We talked about how excited we were. So it's unfortunate. McRae Martin suffering some sort of injury. C4 put that out, I think, like Wednesday or Thursday. So this was very last minute. I don't know if McRae's addressed it at all. So hopefully whatever he's dealing with, he's back to 100% soon, because I still really want to see that match when they can do it. There's a lot of storyline elements there. I'm sure if one Lever Sage was here, he'd probably be theorizing that Junior jumped him or something, because he's got this new narrative against our guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, by the way,
I can't believe I've forgotten to tell Lee this. I'm going to tell him this as well on the next edition of This Is Wrestling. London has got some heat with Lever Sage, London Lightning, for picking Hot Stepper McRae Martin to kind of go over and saying how London is, he's last year's news and all that. I was chatting with London. He's like, he heard that on the podcast and he pressed pause on it and he deleted the episode, is what he told me.
Wow.
So, yeah. So some heat there between London and Lee.
London, if you're listening, I'm a big fan, man.
Say, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I know he's buried me on the show before, but I have, called a bunch of his matches. I got nothing but respect for the guy. Whatever issues he has with Lever Sage, I mean, they got to settle it there. But I am merely a neutral party in all of this.
Yeah, but unfortunate that happened. I believe McRae did wrestle like last weekend at Remix. Is that right?
Yep, he did. It's nothing seemed out of the usual when he was at Remix, so I have no idea. But I know that Mark had put out on the C4 Wrestling account that he wanted to keep the injury private, so obviously we'll respect that. But even then, I have no idea what kind of the issue is from there. I know he had been working a lot of matches, and traveling, because obviously when you become the IWTV Tag Team Champion, it kind of goes back and forth, and you go to different spots in the States and in Canada as well. And so obviously the wear and tear could build up from that. But as far as I know, I know nothing when it comes to that. So.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, hopefully we see him back soon in C4. But this match tonight looks pretty good, and looks like they've also set up Uno's next opponent via return, which I imagine we'll get to right after the match. But the way they adjusted was basically combining with what was going to be another match on the card in Matt Angel versus Junior Benito, combining this into a triple threat. And I think it worked really, really well. You know what you're getting in Benito. This was basically his rematch for the title he lost a couple months ago. And then Matt Angel was one that I hadn't seen before as well. Another newcomer for me. But of all the newcomers I saw on the night, he was definitely my favorite.
Yeah, he's very good, eh? Matt Angel coming from Quebec.
Yeah, he's awesome. Reminds me almost if you put Junior and Speedball Mike Bailey together, and that's kind of the wrestler that you get.
Oh, that's an interesting morph. Yeah, I remember watching Matt Angel when he was C4 champion a few years back. And he was also somebody that was pretty impressive to me when he wrestled for C4. Obviously, hadn't wrestled at C4 for a while, now comes back, and it sounded like they had a really fun match.
They did, yeah. Very, very good. Uno had a sick new mask. I definitely want to mention that as well. All black with like a little bit of red in there. Very menacing. He's really built like buying into this character. And and building it up. And I love what they've done here with C4. As Uno as the champion. I mean, I don't want to take credit for it at all, but the three of us were on here a couple of months ago and going, oh, you know, he's never going to beat Junior, never going to be the C4 champion. But man, this run he's on, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. He has been tremendous, and he's somebody that he's really turned up the heat, both figuratively and I guess literally in a weird sense, in terms of the literal heat that you draw in professional wrestling. But yeah, he's been somebody that's really kind of stepped into his role here for C4, and it's created a lot of intrigue in terms of where this title reign could go, because as he keeps a hold on it. But as you mentioned there, Tanner, a return to C4 Wrestling. It seems like that will be the new challenger for the title at the next show.
Jeez, not even let me finish the match, but yeah, we can.
Sorry, my bad. Sorry, finish the match, and then I stopped all over your setup, didn't I?
You did a little bit there.
Wow.
I thought we'd have a little nice segue, but apparently you're not too good at those.
Jeez, yeah. Okay, I will take responsibility on this segue. Definitely, that's
for sure.
I did not realize. I did not realize you were setting up something. So, anyways, let's pretend like the last 2 minutes didn't happen.
It's only been 5 years of doing the podcast.
That's
we'll
right.
cut you some slack. You know?
Yeah, it's only 5 years, and it's we have been practically the same for the last 5 years. So
never change, Gibby.
That's right.
But yeah, early on, Uno kind of let the two of them do battle with each other and kind of sat out. He was actually sitting in the front row. I was in the second row. He was right in front of me at one point, and just allowing Matt Angel and Junior Benito to fight. Eventually, he came in, dominated big time. The two kind of Matt Angel and Junior Benito teamed up for a lot of the match. We're hitting like double super kicks, that sort of stuff. Finally went and fought each other once they kind of got Uno out of the mix. Junior actually hit his big splash on Matt Angel. Looked like he might have got the win there, but Uno broke that up. And then towards the end, the finish, Uno was looking for a concerto, but he got double power bombed by the two of them through a couple of chairs with their backs facing each other. The double pin ended up failing, but then Benito went up and hit a top rope cutter on Angel, followed that up with a 450, only for Uno to slide in and break up the pin and choke him out. So still your C4 champion there, Evil Uno. Even though Zach gave away the match result there with saying the next challenger emerging.
Well, I didn't say the person. I didn't blow up that spot.
That's true.
That's true.
Anyways, Uno started cutting a promo after the matchup, how there's no man in the C4 locker room that can take that title off of him. And, he's going to be champion forever. The typical heel thing. It was actually a really good promo. I quite liked it. And then he was attacked by a hooded individual with a steel chair, who revealed herself to be Alexia Nicole.
Returning Alexia Nicole.
Yes, she's been injured for a few months now, and from what I understand, like the way she was posting about it on social media, there was a good chance that the injury was going to cost her career.
So it's good to see her back. I saw the clip of Nicole drilling the chair shot to Evil Uno, and Evil Uno getting launched into the door from that chair shot.
Yeah, quite the shot.
Like a lawn dart going into the door.
Yes.
So it looks like we've got the next challenger. Again, I blew up the spot earlier, but now I can officially say it with full confidence that we're probably getting Alexia Nicole versus Evil Uno at the next show.
Yes, I'm pretty confident in that as well.
Perfect. And so that was the C4 championship match. Let's quickly talk about the 6-man tag before we get into the tag team main event for the finals of the tag tournament. So talk a little bit about that 6-man tag match.
Yeah, for sure. So you kind of have the remnants of Twiggy's group there from last season that kind of ran roughshod. Over C4, you got Ben Tull, Mike Marston, and Casey Diamond taking on Jody Threat. Johnny DeLuca, who replaced Young Jay Lee the night of. I'm not sure why, but it happens. And Marcus Mathers, who I know we were talking about the WWE ID system not too long ago. There's somebody who's got that tag on them.
Yep. And he's a high-level worker that I think people will get to know more and more. He's very good, and obviously somebody who's still young and could be something in the future in this business. So it's interesting with the WWID. Obviously, people can listen back to our full thoughts on the system and what it kind of means potentially for independent wrestling. That was a few episodes ago now, but if people want to listen back to that, but Marcus Mathers getting the WWE ID tag. He was also in that promo with William Regal online. I think it was backstage at SmackDown. So already kind of getting featured a little bit as well with this WWE ID tag.
Yeah, for sure. And he's a phenomenal worker. Probably the highlight of this match. Aside from Jody Threat, she's also incredible. We know she's been with Impact for around a year now. So great to see some of these high level talents continue to come back to C4 and really round out this roster. And then, of course, on the heel side of things, the Twiggy group, they don't quite have the momentum that they did like this time last year. Obviously lacking Twiggy, but Marston is one that stepped up in a big way, and he's one that I've quite enjoyed. I believe him and Mathers had a match a couple of months ago, which Marston was taunting him throughout the match about that last match. Like, did you forget about me and stuff along those lines. But Bentel did end up pinning Jody Threat in the end.
There you go. And so that kind of continues a little bit of the remnants of Twiggy in this storyline as well. So getting the victory there. So any other matches that I'm missing out on before we get to the tag tournament final?
I believe we hit on them all.
Okay, perfect. Let's get to the final then. So talk about this final, how it was kind of put together. And I think you mentioned it earlier in terms of who ended up winning, but kind of talk about this match and what was kind of set up as well with this tournament.
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't mention the who won it, but I think going into it, you could probably guess just with the gravity of the whole tournament and what it means that the baby faces were probably going to go over, which they did. But it was phenomenal. This was a really, really good tag team matchup. I know I talked last month at their show there about, just how good of a tag team wrestling match C4 is able to put together. And I think this show just continued that trend, especially the finals here. Miracle Generation are really, really good. They remind me a lot of the Young Bucks, but without all of the corny shtick that they've kind of accumulated over the years. Mm-hmm. Just like the good wrestlers.
Yep.
And yeah, I really enjoyed them. Stu and London were a great duo as well. Phenomenal wrestlers, both in their own rights. Bit of a student teacher thing kind of going on here, but definitely a different way than Evil Uno and Junior Benito's relationship is right now. But they worked together really well. These teams had some great chemistry. I believe Miracle Generation did work against Uno and Grayson a couple of months ago. And I think that was actually the show we were all at there for Chris Le Champion's bachelor party. Oh, yes.
There. We were all up in the balcony.
Yeah, you had your if Twiggy wins, we riot sign.
That's right.
And lack of Hornswoggle costume.
That's also correct. Yes.
So we know what three of these guys can do against each other, and just replacing Uno with London Lightning. Love you, Evil Uno, but I think London Lightning is a little bit more of an exciting wrestler at this point in his career. And the two of them just worked really well together. They ended up picking up the win with a sharpshooter and a crossface at the same time, which was really cool.
Very nice. So they were able to get the trophies for the tag tournament. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well, because you touched on a little bit there, the teacher-student dynamic in terms of the tag team. I think that will also just work out very well in terms of, London Lightning being a part of a bunch of different matches, like you mentioned with Miracle Generation. I think that could only be an upwards trajectory there. And so, yeah, the big victory in the tag final.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to see if, we're going to see these guys keep tagging together a little bit. The trophy presentation was also really nice. I have to mention that. Steven and Terry's family were all there. They actually had the balcony section for this show. So they all came in and presented the trophies. Steven had some tears in his eyes, and, it's a really nice heartfelt moment there for two of C4's most popular stars. And yeah, I'm really curious to see if these two are going to keep tagging with each other. I'd love to see it if they do. I still hope that maybe we get Stu integrated into the Evil Uno program a little bit, and wonder where, maybe he would stand, whether he'd be with Uno or against him. But wherever they go, I'll be watching.
For sure. It's I would think with them winning the tournament that they'll be incorporated in some way at future C4 shows, but as you mentioned, you never know when it comes to what happens in the future and where it goes from there. But anything else from this show you wanted to touch on and make sure that people want to know about, and your final thoughts on the show overall?
Yeah, final thoughts. I don't think it was quite as strong as a couple of the last shows, but very, very good nonetheless. I think if you're going to go out of your way to watch it, the tag tournament final was probably my favorite on the night, followed by the street fight and the C4 title match, pretty neck and neck for second and third. But overall, really good. I'm very excited for their next show. No show next month, of course, with holidays. But their next show is Friday, January 17th. C4 Fire and Ice.
And I believe that is Lever Sage's birthday that day.
I did hear that.
Yeah.
The big 5-0 as well. So
that's right.
Been some talk we might be up in the balcony again, eh?
Yeah, maybe we do that again, and hopefully I can secure some sort of leprechaun costume this time, and kind of get that done and over with, and try and dispel some more rumors. I thought the photo with the actual guy would do such, but apparently not. It has only greatly enhanced the rumors of me being a certain professional wrestler. But yes, that is something kind of being looked at for that January 17th show, and should be fun. And some wrestlers already announced. Joey Janela is going to be on the show, and Megan Bain as well is going to be on that show.
Yeah, so on that Hornswoggle thing, Mark, if you're listening, now's your chance. We need to see Hornswoggle versus Twiggy in a steel cage match. Book it for C4. You'll sell out the entire place.
Oh, boy.
It'll be awesome. But,
oh, boy.
But yes, in all seriousness, Fire and Ice looks great. Good to see Joey Janela back. He was here about a year ago, and I enjoyed him. Megan Bain is someone I've never seen wrestle before. You've also got Junior Benito on the poster there, as well as TDT, Kevin Koo, Evil Uno, and Sheldon Jean.
There you go. So that is something to look forward to in the new year of 2025. It is getting close, folks. We're only a month away before we get back to the new year and what's going on there. Before we wrap up here, Tanner, I'm going to give you the floor for any sort of takes that you have when it comes to the modern wrestling scene, anything that you've kind of been, that's kind of caught your eye, I should say, in terms of whether it be WWE, AEW, or even anywhere else in the wrestling scene. The takes can be flowing for you if you would like.
Oh, geez, where do I even start? I've been a little down on wrestling lately. I know I put a message in our group chat, more so, I guess, with the big two. Just neither one particularly doing it for me at the moment. I'm hoping the Continental Classic kind of turned that around for me with AEW. WWE would take a lot, but that's another issue. I heard Survivor Series was a little bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of putting it.
The New Day thing, that caught my attention. That I enjoyed.
Yeah, I also enjoyed that. That was a nice little segment. Certainly, you know what was funny about that segment, and I won't go too in depth in case we want to chat about it on a future episode of This Is Wrestling. But the funny thing about that for me is, like, a lot of the stuff with WWE, I find with their promo segments, I just don't get the sense of a genuineness, if that's a word. Like, it just doesn't feel like it's genuine. It feels manufactured. But a lot of the stuff with that New Day segment felt genuine to me, and that stable wasn't really a stable that connected for me personally. In fact, I think that, I think it's long overdue for them to break up or go into different paths. But that whole segment I thought was really well done, and I thought all three guys showcased good promo skills in there, and I just love the idea of a neck injury being like, so what? You broke your neck. All these wrestlers broke their neck and they showed up to work and wrestled. Like, that idea, I find it's one of those, it's so preposterous, but it's so hilarious, and it's such a heel thing to do that I enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. The New Day are actually one that have really connected with me over the years. I know they're not the best wrestlers in the world, but in terms of entertainment value and comedy and the way that they've been able to reinvent themselves, but also have some pretty good matches. Like their stuff with the Usos really stands out to me. But yeah, they've connected with me a lot over the years, especially like 2015-ish to when they turned heel there, up until like Kofi won the title. I was at Mania when Kofi won that title. I was also at Mania 32 when they did like the big Bootios entrance. Yeah, they were a team I quite liked. I loved Big E as WWE champion as well. And I feel like they've been a little bit stale since Big E left. So I was kind of waiting for a shakeup like this. I thought they were going to do the obvious thing, which was Xavier probably turning on Kofi. But personally, I'm glad it's not the way that they went. And I don't know if this is where it's going, but man, I really hope Big E's coming back.
He is getting integrated into the story, and it is notable that in the piece that he wrote for the Players Tribune that if I never wrestle again, if they tell me I can't wrestle again, I feel like it's some interesting wordplay that's being used when it comes to Big E, but it's smart to kind of create interest in people wanting to see Big E get back in the ring. Hopefully, he is at 100% health and can get in there and get cleared by the doctors and can get back in the ring. But I think he's also somebody that's mentioned that he is at peace if he's never able to get back in. But my feeling is that sooner rather than later he will have a match. Just kind of the way that they've laid everything out. But who knows? Again, anything can happen in the world of professional wrestling. Any other quick takes that's on your mind there, Tanner?
Yeah, I'll just mention that Big E piece was phenomenal in the Tribune. I definitely encourage anybody to go and read that. But I think we all know certain events coming up in January. And I think if he were to come out at number 30, a lot of people, myself included, would be pretty happy. But to me, why include him in this story if that's not where they're going?
Yeah,
is where I would start questioning things. But I'll let it play out and we'll go from there.
Let it play out. I've only heard that a few times when it comes to some storylines, but we will see how it goes when it comes to Big E. But anyways, thank you so much, Tanner, for your time, being able to come on and talk about everything C4 wrestling, a little bit of wrestling takes as well when it comes to WWE and AEW. So again, very much appreciate your time. We will reach out to you once again in January. Who knows? Maybe we'll be back up in the balcony again. Maybe we'll change up the costumes. Maybe I will actually be able to get my costume in time for that balcony show. Who knows what could happen at the next C4 show?
I got to figure out one too. I guess I didn't have a costume at the last show there.
Yeah, you're putting the heat on me for not having a Hornswoggle costume. Where was your costume?
I just couldn't figure out a wrestler that I looked like, to be honest with you.
Wow. You put the heat on me.
I'll come as Finley. How about that?
Oh God, that would absolutely make sure that I would not bring the costume back, the leprechaun costume. But I showed you the receipt. I showed you an attempt was made, and money was taken out of my account, and I still stand by that story.
Not good enough, Zach.
What do you mean not good enough?
Not good enough. Connor McDavid, he was ripping it in the Amazon Prime documentary there.
Oh yes, yeah.
That's not good enough. Dig in. You got to dig in. You got to find that costume, and you got to be there up in the balcony for Lee's big birthday bash.
Yes.
We're going to get the voice to give him a big announcement.
Oh, for sure. That should definitely be a thing. But based on if Lee listens back and the way I've done some segues, I've got something to look forward to on the next episode of This Is Wrestling. So I will have to get prepared for that for the next episode. But once again, Tanner, really appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you in January.
Always a pleasure. Looking forward to it. And congrats to the show on what was a pretty big year.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. So for Tanner Reil, I am Zach McGibbon. We will see you on the next episode of This Is Wrestling.